Hi, my name is Leisha Walterman, and this is my Module 3 assignment. I chose to interview people from different buildings in the district to try to get different perspectives. Ms. Compton is a principal. She's been in education for 16 years, and she's been in Turner for the past 3 as a principal. Ms. McGill is a special education teacher who's been in education for 19 years, and Ms. Brown has been a para-educator in the same building for the past 7 years. When I asked what they could tell me about the child find procedures, my SPED teacher and para weren't quite sure what that was. My principal was familiar with child find, and she talked about the district requirements we need to fulfill. She also mentioned that at the building level, the administrators and the office staff are on the lookout for students, younger kiddos, younger siblings of kids who actually attend their school, who might be in need of those services. So for example, she talked about a family who brought in a toddler, and based on different things that she saw, she actually reached out to the district administrator, Trevor, who sought out what could be done for that family. And he actually contacted the family and then went through the screening process with them. When I asked what the most challenging part of their role was with special education, the differences were glaring based on the role that they served. As a principal, she just has a hard time finding all the time that she needs to go through all the IEPs, make sure the schedules are set so that all the minutes are met accordingly, and just the responsibilities connected with being the LEA. What she said was a huge drawback to our district was that we don't have a process coordinator. She used to have those in her own district her old district at the building that she was a principal at, and it was great. They took over a lot of the SPED responsibilities, which was fantastic for her, and now she has to find time to do all those things. The special education teacher, her challenges were the severe behaviors because a lot of her students are on behavior plans, so she talked about the struggles with that. And the para said it was hard to meet the needs of each of the individual teachers because everyone expects something different from her, so it's hard for her to know what to do in different classrooms because they all have different approaches to what needs to be done. They were all smiles when answering what the rewarding part of their job was, and it came down to relationships with students or with the parents or even with other teachers. You could tell that made a huge difference. So knowing that, I need to make sure that I am very aware of the relationships that I'm forming with the parents, with the students, and even with my staff. Just because when we are successful as a team, then we can take time to celebrate the success together, and we all know that we're a part of that, which I think will be a huge morale booster. The advice they had with regards to the supervision of special education staff was different, again, depending upon their roles. My biggest takeaways from this would be make sure to clarify what special services are. The principal mentioned make sure everyone understands that they're specialized services, not just babysitting, which when I think about that, that's something that we need to address. We also need to establish roles between individuals. The special education teacher talked about how she has some paras who have been in the district for quite a while and they feel like they know everything that needs to happen. But she's like, although they're great when working with students, they don't always know what needs to happen. And the IEP is there to tell us what to do. And that IEP isn't always being followed, which is a huge no-no. So she's trying to figure out a way to professionally talk to the paras about, I know that you have experience, but this is what the IEP says and this is what we have to do. The para said to make sure that the schedules are actually doable because she doesn't like to get in trouble with teachers when she can't be 2 places at one time. So that is difficult. The other big thing that she mentioned was just having people talk to them directly, not just through email, and like actually valuing their input as well. When working effectively with parents of special needs children, again, it came down to the relationship. The para mentioned that she doesn't really work with parents, which makes sense. But the special education teacher said that she spends a lot of time making sure that the families know that she's empathetic to the struggles that they experience, and it's her job to do whatever she can to meet their child's needs. She also says it's important to listen to them. Sometimes I do just need to vent, but then take that and turn it around to something that can be productive. The principal mentioned that at the IEP meetings, don't focus on all the negatives, what the kids cannot do, but turn them into growth statements and definitely celebrate the success. It was interesting to hear the responses to this question, how do you work with regular education teachers who have students with special needs? The principal, when she first started talking, I found myself wanting to defend the district. She said it's a struggle because There kind of appears to be a district mindset that if I have a special education student in my classroom, I have a para. And I couldn't defend it because the first thing that teachers ask when they find out that they have special education students on their roster is, how much time do I get the para? So upon reflection, I feel like we need more differentiation PD because we are all here to serve the needs of all the students in their classroom, regardless of what their capabilities are when they walk into our classroom. So we need to shake that mindset that I get a para every time I have a special education student. The teacher, the special ed teacher, is amazing, and what she says, she does. I've seen her in the halls before school, touching base with the teachers to make sure that if there's a common assessment that's being taken, she's making sure the accommodations are met. At the beginning of the year, I've seen her sit down with every single teacher and make sure they're familiar with the IEP and also familiar with what she knows about the student. The para, she goes in, she does what they tell her to do, she goes in the classroom. Very procedural. I found all the advice that each of the individuals came up with was good advice. And again, it goes back to relationships and communication. As a principal, you need to know what's going on. You need to be in those SPED classrooms, making sure that the minutes are met. And Christy made sure to mention deadlines are huge. We can't miss them or we may be out of compliance. So when I thought about that, I would definitely have some kind of calendar to make sure I had big deadlines on my calendar and a little bit reminder beforehand so that we are on top of everything. The special education teacher said you need to be well-versed in SPED law, which I keep hearing that over and over and over again. And also make sure you are at the IEP meeting from start to finish. The para, from her perspective, said you need to get to know the paras. We're part of the staff too, so we want to be valued, which was good to hear. When I asked what the role of the special education teacher was, their answers all made sense. The special education teacher does work the closest with the students and the families. They're kind of our liaison from home and school. So they are the student's biggest advocate. It is very important that they have clear and consistent communication between the families and between the gen ed teachers. They are the expert on what the students need, and they need to make sure to provide the special education or the gen ed teacher what they need to make sure to meet those needs. And again, I want to go back to what Compton said earlier is it's their role to make sure that it's specialized education, not just babysitting, whether it's in the special ed setting or included in the classroom. Based on what these guys said, as a building administrator, they are also the advocate for the student. They need to make sure everyone's doing their job in a timely manner and handle issues when it's not being done. So as I reflect on this as a future administrator, I need to make sure that I'm informing staff of different expectations. What are my expectations for communication between different individuals? How am I going to stay informed? It makes me think about how I can be proactive about some of these things and not just make assumptions that they're done. But I also don't want to micromanage, so I think there's a fine line between that. There are a lot of commonalities between the response to what characteristics they seek in aspiring administrators with regard to special education. The principal and the SPED teacher both said in different words, but with the same meaning, that you need to believe that all students can learn. They may learn at different paces, but they all can learn. They want someone who's approachable, who's a good communicator, and who builds solid relationships with the people that they work with. So upon reflection, that made me feel good because 6 years ago, before I became an instructional coach, I wouldn't have been able to say that I could fulfill these expectations. But after my experience as an instructional coach, I really believe I could. I've been in situations where I've had to handle some rough issues without prior experience. But because I have solid relationships with who I work with, and because I listened to what they were saying in the situation, we were able to get through these issues. I've also become a better communicator. I used to only have to communicate with really my 3 building level, grade level teammates. But now I work with 40 different people over the course of the week, and they all have different needs. They all have different expectations of what I do, but I'm able to conform to that, and I feel like do a decent job. So I'm excited because these things are things that are definitely manageable. It was really awesome being able to talk to 3 different people in 3 different roles in 3 different buildings and hear their perspective on special education and what should happen. They've definitely given me a lot to think about in my future role as an administrator. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing your responses.